Well, let's see. It's 12:01, so that makes it good afternoon from Kansas City. And welcome to Sports Beat Live, Chiefs Edition, NFL Draft Edition. We're going to talk about the Chiefs and what happened on Thursday night in the first round of the NFL Draft, and we'll get going on what might happen today in the second and third rounds and on Saturday when rounds 4 through 7 play out and conclude the NFL draft. And before we introduce our fellows that are going to give us some great insights on this, wanted to shout out to Community America for their sponsorship today. It's great to have them on board, and you'll hear from Community America a little bit later in the show. So, Herbie, let's start with what happened last night. Chiefs, of course, with 2 picks in the first round. They used both of them, even though they traded up. They traded up and didn't have to give up their second first-round pick in the trade, but got Trent McDuffie, the cornerback from Washington at number 21 after trading up from 29. And seems like they, I don't know, kind of got what they wanted here. They went into the draft with some specific needs, and those were fulfilled in the first two with this first 2 picks, starting with Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, and you're right. Brett Veach kind of previewed this draft starting in the offseason where he said defense was their priority. And so when they didn't address it specifically during free agency, the draft made perfect sense, and this is where they had to get their guys. I know a lot of national people were saying, oh, wide receiver, but that was not a specific need. Their specific needs were on defense. So trading up to get McDuffie, they gave up the 29th pick overall, the 94th pick, one of their third-round picks, and then their 121st pick to move up and get Trent McDuffie, who is widely regarded as one of the top cornerbacks in the draft. So this is a fantastic home run hit for them to get a guy who can be a plug-and-play type starter. Now you go out and get George Karlaftis out of Purdue, and they needed to address pass rusher. So, look, if I'm grading this draft early, which I'm not, I'm going to wait until Sunday. Those 2 picks right there alone, that's an A because they got what they had to get, and that's defense at cornerback and pass rusher.
Okay, Herbie's excited about this. Let's see what Terrence Warno Robinson said. Love the direction of this draft so far. We went 2 positions of need, and both are 21 years old with upside and day one starters. Hard not to like the value of these picks. I agree. Sam, would you call it a home run pick, though, Trent McDuffie at 21?
Well, I think they were really surprised he was available at 21. They did not anticipate making a move up for Trent McDuffie because they didn't anticipate that he'd be available sitting there at 21. And the Patriots, of course, are always a team that's willing to move back. So I actually thought going in that 21 was a pick to watch because if the Chiefs were going to move up, that was a team that was going to be willing to move back. I do think he's the third best corner in the draft. I had projected a different cornerback, one because I had him taking at 29 or 30. But also because, I thought Elam from Florida fit a Steve Spagnuolo mold as far as his length and his physicality. McDuffie's a little bit of a different cornerback than what we've seen here in Kansas City. He's 5'11". A lot of the scouts say that he plays bigger than that size. So maybe it's not quite as much of a surprise that they're going to fit him into Steve Spagnuolo's scheme. But he's got really good ball skills. I think when you watch a lot of his highlights, he's a pretty physical guy. They even at Washington, they blitzed him quite a bit. So I was a little surprised to hear Andy Reid say that they view him as an outside guy and only an outside guy because I thought, man, at Washington, he's pretty good coming down off the edge of the line of scrimmage there. And I wondered if maybe they wanted to push L'Jarius Sneed to the outside a little bit. But I think anytime you get a guy that you did not anticipate would be available at that number, you're coming out of the first round feeling really, really good.
To Sam's point real quick, when you talk about all that versatility, I remember last night when I asked McDuffie, what is he bringing to this scheme? And he invoked Tyrann Mathieu, and I thought that was phenomenal because, as we know, when Tyrann Mathieu was with the Chiefs, Spagnuolo was he was a moving chess piece. He was able to move him all over the defensive backfield and even into the slot and into the box. So, this is the kind of guy that they're getting. When he compares his skill set to Matthew, I thought that was pretty telling that they are going to use him in a lot of variety of ways.
And Brian LaBerge makes a really good point there, because when you make a trade in the draft, you're basically guessing that somebody else is going to take that guy, right? Especially when you only pick 8 picks later. Buffalo came in and traded up to get Elam a couple of picks later. So the Chiefs were absolutely correct in their anticipation that if they don't make this move, somebody else is going to come get this guy. So they accurately anticipated when the run of cornerbacks was going to commence.
It also gets me wondering, and I wonder this every year, how much teams know about each other on draft night, especially in the first round. They have their draft board up, and they have to have other teams' draft boards up as well. They've got to know what's going on around them, and you just wonder how much, sort of back channel conversations are happening, and for the Chiefs to make the deal that they did and to get ahead of the certain teams that they needed to get ahead of. But okay, listen, before we get Vahe involved in this, and trust me, we'll get Vahe involved in this. But let's hear from Trent McDuffie. We got a chance to talk to both he and Karlaftis last night, and here's a couple of thoughts from Trent McDuffie.
Honestly, I look at myself almost like a Tyrann Mathieu type of guy, someone who's going to be able to go in and just play a bunch of different positions and just help out the team however I can. That's a big thing for me moving forward, is just going in there with the mindset of however I can get on the field, however I can help out this team, I'm going to do everything I can to do it. So I know that this organization has a great defensive mindset. So honestly, very excited to be a part of this team. Growing up, watching Tyrann Mathieu at LSU, he was one of those dudes where he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, but he was always going to make a play. And that's something that I always try to do in my game, is just be that person who's going to flash on the screen, be that guy who's always around the football, because I'm a football player and I want to create the best opportunities for my team. So watching Tyrann Mathieu and just how he became a leader, how he practices, how he played games, just the tenacity and heart that he gave is something that I can look at and try to model my game after.
Not a bad player to emulate or try to emulate, Vahe, right? In Tyrann Mathieu?
Absolutely, and you have to love that he's perceiving himself that way, both in terms of his versatility and his motor, his drive. Whether the Chiefs see him that way, I guess we'll come to know, and some of that'll be in how it plays out. Just to go back to one thing really quick though, too, Blair. I mean, looking at Andy Reid last night, I'd be interested to know how you guys felt about this, but I think Andy was going to project being happy with these picks probably no matter what. But I thought he was downright radiant, and he invoked a couple of his real catchphrases with McDuffie when he was talking about loves the game, and he even dropped in the high octane for our guy George, which I thought, I don't know, I really thought Andy could hardly contain himself, but I may be just easily persuaded, but I wondered if you guys thought he was as elated as I thought he was.
Well, he absolutely seemed pretty thrilled. Maybe he had a little memory of the last time they drafted a cornerback from Washington in the first round. That worked out okay for him. Turned out Marcus Peters was, I think he was NFL's Defensive Rookie of the Year that year, started from day one. And that was emphasized last night to some extent, that McDuffie and Karlaftis are expected to be starters from the get-go. But one thing about really admiring Tyrann Mathieu that occurs to me is, Andy Reid said, and I think Brett Veach said it as well, that we fully expect to see McDuffie on the outside, as Sam alluded to just a little while ago. But the way that Chiefs play some defense, they can move some guys around in the defensive backfield. Herbie, don't you? Is there a possibility we can see? You think there's a possibility to see McDuffie move around a little bit?
I believe so. We always seem to forget that the Chiefs have DeAndre Baker on the team as well. I mean, this is a guy who was a first-round pick just a couple of years ago. Last year had to still work his way back from the leg injury, but they have a lot of pieces there. You've got McDuffie, you've got Snead, you've got Rashad Fenton, and Baker. So can they get creative back there? I believe they can. I mean, McDuffie probably has the ability to also play safety. So, when you're in your nickel and dime packages, you got a lot of moving pieces, and we know that Spagnuolo loves versatility with his cornerbacks, and he has that with McDuffie.
So Paul DeSantis writes, love both the picks, but how surprised were we when they traded up and didn't select Jermaine Johnson? Didn't he ended up with the Jets, I believe, right? And who I believe had a terrific first round. I know that's when the trade was made. Of course, we're sitting in the media room at the Chiefs practice facility, and we're watching it on TV like everybody else. We don't get a heads up that a trade is happening. We see it on TV, but that kind of gets us all speculating on what it might be. I did hear the name Jermaine Johnson come up a couple of times. Sam, were you surprised it wasn't him?
So I thought it could be an edge guy, but I'd kind of heard before the draft that I did not think the Chiefs were going to draft Jermaine Johnson. And I know that, a lot of the mock drafts nationally had him as a top 10 pick. I think the fact that so many teams passed on him told you that was off. They were receiving some sort of poor intel, or they were missing something with Jermaine Johnson. So I know a lot of people wanted Jermaine Johnson, but you got to keep in mind with the Chiefs had a great need at both those positions, but they had a great need at cornerback. McDuffie was their top guy available of all players, not just cornerbacks on their list, and he's available there at 21. And, I think he was their top guy available for a few picks, not just there at 21. All of a sudden, he's still sitting there. I just thought it made all the sense. And I'm not like the most advocate of trading up, especially, for a team that I feel like is going to have to be building their roster for a long time now through the draft because of these monster contracts, particularly the Mahomes deal. So I'm not, always the biggest proponent of trading up, but I just think when all the stars align there, McDuffie's the guy that made the most sense.
I do believe Willie Gay was among those advocating the Jermaine Johnson pick after the trade was announced. Hopefully he's all right with how it played out.
That's an added entertainment value for everybody, really, on social media as the draft is unfolding. You get to see where current Chiefs stand on some of these picks. Of course, they're always going to end up being supportive, but for the most part, but Patrick Mahomes not available, I guess, to weigh in on social media. If I got that right, Herbie, is he? Isn't he? Is it bachelor partying this weekend?
Yeah, he kind of mentioned that on the first day of the Chiefs opening offseason workout program on the 18th, that he would be watching the draft from his bachelor party. He didn't disclose where it was, but yeah, he's kind of predisposed right now.
I think he commented on the Mavs game, though.
Oh, okay.
I think he poked his head out for that.
Happy for his Mavs to win in 6, but maybe he's ticked off about the direction of the draft for the Chiefs so far. But better take that back. So, okay, hey, we've got another draft pick to talk about, George Karlaftis, and we'll do that as soon as we return from this message from Community America.
In KC, unbelievable things happen every day.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's why Community America does unbelievable things to move all of KC towards financial peace of mind. Because when you believe in unbelievable things happen. Join us at communityamerica.com.
But not so out of sight, out of mind. They can't jump on the Sports Beat KC Chiefs edition and comment for Community America. Good to know for Patrick Mahomes. So, a busy night for the Chiefs. Just think about this: 2 out of the last 3 years, we've gone to we didn't go anywhere. In what, two? Was it two of them or just one? Just was the draft open in 2021? I can't remember now. I don't think so, right? And certainly not in 2020. So
it was in Cleveland last year, Blair.
Right, but going to the Chiefs.
Going
to the Chiefs.
My bad, sorry.
Yeah, this is the first time since 2019.
Gotcha. And still, Chiefs didn't make things very interesting in the first round 2 of the last 3 years. They just had traded out of the first round during trade. So it was a busy night, and it was a late night, of course, for those that cover the Chiefs, but a fun night as well. I thought the draft, Herbie, kind of unfolded the way we thought. The familiar names came off the board and about the places we thought they were going to. To me, one of the bigger surprises of the night was, and we all thought the Steelers were going to take a quarterback at number 20. They didn't take the one we thought they were going to take, Malik Willis from Liberty. They ended up taking Pickett from Pitt, who shares the stadium. Pittsburgh shares the stadium with the Steelers. So he ended up going to the Steelers at number 20. So that was the only quarterback taken in the first round last night. I suspect we will see several others go today. So with pick number 30, the Chiefs selected George Karlaftis, defensive end from Purdue. And before we bat around George, let's hear from George Karlaftis, taken number 30 last night by the Chiefs.
That's kind of how the way I was raised. My parents pushed me to do just about every sport imaginable. When you found when you find the one you love, work as hard as you possibly can at it. And I feel like there's not a whole lot of sense if you're going to dedicate almost your whole life to doing something that you don't do it to the maximum, to your maximum ability every single time you're out there. I love everything about it. I love the off season. I like the mental and physical challenge and strain that, the chess game. I like every single play is a single challenge, both pre-snap, after the ball snap, during the play, whether it's executing your assignment, making the play, doing the right thing, having the perfect technique, and trying to do that over and over and over again and being perfect. That challenge drives me, because you do a sport, like a sport that's repetitive over and over and over again. Eventually, you get a pretty good rhythm going. And with this, you have a different stimulus every single time and a different challenge every single play. So that's what I love about it. But on top of everything else, you love the locker room, right? You love the connection and the bond you make with the teammates and everything that comes with that.
That was Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest making a cameo appearance. Great to have Matt. I guess we'll have to, cut him a royalty check for that appearance.
I thought he snuck into our broadcast here. I was like, "What's Matt doing here?"
Always good to see Matt. But a lot going on there. Both of those answers were in reference to questions about just about what motivates him and Karlaftis. He has a really interesting backstory that I'm sure we'll explore in a much bigger way later. But we just kind of scratched the surface of it last night after the selection. Vahe, why don't you take us down that road of what George Karlaftis is about and how he came to football and where he was before football.
Well, but born in Athens, not Georgia, Athens, Greece,
not Ohio,
and not Ohio. And I don't know if this holds up, but I believe there's only been 5 Greek-born players in the NFL before. So here he is, and proudly Greek, right? I mean, we were kind of joking about this last night, but he didn't even like the inference that maybe he just identifies Greek. No, he's Greek. He says he's a Greek citizen. He was there till he was 13, and he did come here at a strange and hard time of his life. It was after his Greek-born father died, and his American-born mother brought him here to West Lafayette. I believe they met in West Lafayette. But his background before then, he was most notably a junior national water polo player in Greece, and you could see just from the pace of how he talked. I loved his answer about over and over and over again and perfection, and even perfecting the pre-snap and the after snap and all that. You could see why Andy Reid was saying we'd enjoy him, and that bit about high octane. And I think if I understood him correctly, I think football did not come naturally immediately to him, but football became an important part of his assimilation into the country. And now obviously it's a big part of his identity. So he seems like he'll be a interesting guy to get to know. I think from every indication, it absolutely looks like he's going to make an immediate impact.
Yeah, Sam, I think so, right? I mean, he's going to be given. They're counting on that. He's got a first-round pick at a position of need. He's getting thrown in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the great things about defensive end is those guys all rotate in. So, rookies play. I mean, we even saw Josh Kando on the field a little bit last year. But with Karlaftis, the interesting thing about that is, so I tend to watch the guys I think the Chiefs might take and watch a little bit of their film. Unlike, one of our predecessors here, which we should give Terez a shout out on any draft show, but Terez would watch everybody. I tend to watch the guys I think the Chiefs might take. And I did not watch Karlaftis because I thought he'd be gone. Like I was just sure that he would be gone. And then buzz started to come from, Todd McShay and Peter McKing over the last week that he might fall out of the first round. And I thought, well, there's no way he should fall completely out of the first round because he shouldn't get past the Chiefs. Because when you go back and watch him, I know that the cliche is the high motor that even Brett Veach used it last night. I think we all knew that phrase was coming at some point. But man, he just has so much energy on the field and he's really physical with his hands. Now his arms aren't extremely long. Maybe that's one of the reasons he dropped, but he's really physical with his hands. It was kind of funny. Adam Teicher from ESPN loves to ask Andy Reid about comparisons for players, and Andy always hates it. But he almost said one last night, and I do wonder who he might have been talking about because there had been some comparisons with Karlaftis, the way he plays, not the athletic ability, but the way he plays to J.J. Watt because he's so violent with his hands. Now, J.J. Watt also has really long arms. Karlaftis does not. So it's even more effective for J.J. Watt than it might be for Karlaftis. But he plays with that kind of energy on the field. And I do think that's going to be something that this defensive line in particular really needs.
Quick addition there. Just I thought that Andy did have somebody in mind and then just decided he was going to restrain himself because he thought it might put a little too much on those considerable shoulders.
Okay, Herbie. So Sam says Karlaftis is the next J.J. Watt. I've heard. I've heard. Listen, the comparison isn't, not direct, but maybe if, at some point having the impact on a defensive line the way a Max Crosby has had, and with the Raiders, the Chiefs have lacked that for the last couple of years. Meanwhile, we talk about how all the other AFC West teams have improved themselves. The Chiefs, in one place where the AFC West seems to have gotten away from the Chiefs is rushing the passer. Chiefs were really bad sack total last year, bottom 4, I think, in the NFL. And, the idea is that they began to address it with the drafting of Karlaftis. But you also hear some other things, like he's not a great bend guy. As Sam alluded to, his arm length is not ideal for NFL. That's when you read the pros and cons of his profiles, that always comes up. But one other thing, while I'm thinking about it, I looked at a consensus mock draft yesterday as it was unfolding, and of course they took about 1,000 mock drafts, and I'm sure Herbie's yours were part of it. And they had McDuffie at 17 and Karlaftis at 21. The Chiefs get him at 21 and 30. So those are good gets. But what are your impressions of Karlaftis and what the Chiefs got in him?
Well, here's the thing with mock drafts, and I always tell people this, okay? There's always that unknown because we don't know what teams are going to do in the draft. Are they going to move up? I mean, there's always, over the last couple of years, there's always been multiple trades of teams moving up to get the guy they want. So it didn't surprise me one bit that Karlaftis slid down to 30. And he's a guy that I pegged on my first mock draft to go to the Chiefs. So kudos. I got one right. But you have an opportunity to work with this guy. Okay, so as Sam alluded to, they rotate a lot of guys in. So you have the offseason to find his strengths, his weaknesses, and how they fit within a Spagnuolo scheme, and then you work on it. I love the fact that he mentioned last night that he has an opportunity to learn from veteran teammates. Don't think for 1 second Chris Jones and Frank Clark are going to be in his ear, kind of like what Tamba Hali used to do back in the day, and pull the guys off of the side and work with them. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them doing that, especially with Chris Jones there, teaching him how to rush the passer from the edge. I thought it was a great pick. They needed to get a pass rusher. Karlaftis made perfect sense to me to grab it, especially after teams started moving up to get the guys they want. That caused the slide down. It happens every year.
Absolutely. All right, let's spin it forward. Dan Walton wants to know, draft a receiver tonight. We've seen a couple of people that want to know what the Chiefs are going to do. So first, remind us, with the trade yesterday, what did the Chiefs have tonight, Herbie? What numbers do they have?
We'll have 2 picks in the second round and then 1 in the third. Of course, you're asking me this. I don't have the paper in front of me, but I think, hold up. Here we go. 50, 62, and 103. I think, they're going to have an opportunity to stay flexible. And, I asked Brett Veach that last night, how do you balance the wants versus needs? And he just said, hey, we have to go in there with the mindset to stay true to our draft board, and that means flexibility. Is wide receiver on the menu right now? I think it has to be. You missed out on all those big names on the first night, but there's a lot of players still available. Sky Moore is still available. George Pickens. I know Sam McDowell loves this guy. I love that guy too. He's coming off of an injury, but he was one of the Chiefs' top 30 visits, and you use that top 30 visit to look at medicals. So if they feel if they're comfortable that he's going to be healthy and he's available there at 50, I think he makes perfect sense to grab.
Yeah, Sam, the receivers came off in a flurry last night, and it was kind of unreasonable to expect one of those, what was it, 8 that ended up getting drafted in the first round last night. What a change too, right? Wide receivers going off the board, and I don't think no running back was taken last night. That just doesn't happen anymore, does it? But wide receivers are very great class for wide receivers, and they were at a premium on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, a great class, but also when you see the kind of money that these guys are getting, you'd rather get one in the draft instead. And we not only did we see that many taken, we saw 2 traded, 2 high-profile number 1 guys traded with Marquise Brown and AJ Brown going from Tennessee to Philadelphia. I think I like Pickens a lot. I also think the Chiefs like Pickens a lot. I also like Sky Moore, the other guy that Herbie mentioned. He comes from FCS, right? So I think, and he's only 5'10". So I think people look at him and think, can he stand up to the physicality of the NFL when he hasn't played against SEC football, when he is a smaller guy? But you look deeper, and he led that division in broken tackles for a wide receiver. So he can play physical, even though he's small. I think people probably underestimated Tyreek Hill's ability to play physical because of his height, but Tyreek Hill was a pretty powerful guy. I mean, he was really well built. I think that's what you see a lot in Sky Moore. So I don't know that those 2 guys are going to be available at 50, but I think they could go receiver. I think they still need a right tackle. And I think they need another defensive end. So I wouldn't mind seeing them take, whether it's today or whether it's Saturday, another edge rusher, because like we mentioned, those are guys you can rotate in. You'll find playing time for those guys. We think Frank Clark is in his last year here in Kansas City. You're going to have that need next year. Why not address it in a year where you've got 10 picks?
Right. I was going to say they've got 8 more selections to go over 6 rounds. Is it unreasonable to think that they could actually go back and get more or trade up to if one of those receivers is among not taken among the first 5 or so tonight? Could the Chiefs package their second one, their first second round, and throw in the 4 or maybe a 7? I don't know. I don't know what the value. I certainly don't have the chart in front of me, but in terms of value, if they see one of those wide receivers, could possible for the Chiefs to make a move?
Yeah, I mean, Herbie's already traded all 4 of their 7th round picks like 10 times last night. So I don't know that they have 4 7s left.
for very personal reasons for Herbie. It's a long ride. So, all right. That's so that's where we are. Chiefs have taken 2 picks in the first round. Trent McDuffie, the cornerback from Washington, and George Karlaftis, the Russian from Purdue. I think they're both going to be opening day starters. The question I have is whoever they draft at wide receiver, which I think is happening tonight, wherever it is in the draft, is does that person come in and start for the Chiefs?
I don't think so. You don't need him to start because you have McCole Hardman, you've got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you have Juju Smith-Schuster, you can work into Reese Fountain. I mean, the Chiefs have the wide receivers where whoever they draft doesn't need to come in and start. Let's not forget Cornell Powell and his beautiful soul from last year. He had an opportunity to grow on the practice squad. Maybe this is the year. It took him a couple of years at Clemson to finally emerge, and this might be his year to finally step up.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we all said they need a wide receiver, it's more about, to Herbie's point, the fact that only Marquez Valdez-Scantling is under contract for 2023. So, it's not necessarily the immediate urgency that the 2 positions they drafted last night were, but it's coming. It's right around the corner. So why not get one again when you're loaded with picks, and when it's a deep wide receiver class, and it's another one of those positions where you rotate guys in. Even if he's your 4th wide receiver, he's going to get some snaps.
Right. Totally see it the same way. And to Sam's point earlier too, and Herbie always wanting to trade away the picks. I don't see why they wouldn't be thinking hard about the right package to move up and get this sort of guy now, right? I mean, I don't know if it's identifiably their absolute greatest spot of need. It's probably not quite that, but I think with the look at what the future contracts are and the opportunity here, it's good to do that. But I'm really disappointed everybody's sleeping on University of Pennsylvania product, Justin Watson. He's just sitting there, and he's collecting dust in Herbie and Sam's reference points here. Don't sleep on him.
Can you give us a scouting report, Vahe?
Saw him play against the hated Yale Elis in 2017, I think, and he looked like an NFL receiver. Of course, that was against guys that might not have been NFL defenders.
Well, one of us, if and when that happens, one of us will have to point the cell phone camera on Vahe when he makes his congratulatory call. As a love
my guy.
That's right.
Most of those pin receivers have to go on to do other things, I think.
That might be true, but I seem to recall Tyreek Hill telling one of our lot that he was pretty sure he was pretty fast back in the day. So,
indeed. All right, guys, it was great catching up with you, and it was so much fun today, and I was so eager to get into the conversation that maybe for the first time in the history of Sports Beat Lives, I didn't introduce you. So, but I will. We will include you on the outro. So, big thanks to columnist Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian, and to our beat writer Herbie Tiopi. The fun's just beginning at the NFL Draft. Complete coverage in the Kansas City Star and on KansasCity.com for the next few days. Not just Friday and Saturday, but Sunday, Monday. That's when the undrafted free agent lunacy happens, and Herbie will be all over that. So big thanks to Community America for their sponsorship today. Thanks to Patrick Mahomes for coming on, for providing the halftime entertainment. And always to Monty Davis, who spins the dials and does a great job producing. Guys, appreciate it. Oh, hey, one last thing. Shout out to some folks here that are regulars that said some nice things on the comments. Terrence, I really appreciate it. And Cameron, it's good to be back and see everybody. And Kyle, everybody. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And we'll do it again soon. Take care.